One more thing before I'll let Rav Yair take over is that there were some questions of halakha that were raised following one of the shiurim with Rav Yair regarding preparing tea on Shabbat. And what's
Not with
important
me,
from
with Rav Shmuel, I think. No,
Rav Shmuel? Okay.
the tea was before, I think.
Okay, maybe you were the coffee. No, you don't drink coffee, so you must have
I
been the
don't drink
one.
coffee or tea. I don't know any of the rules. Things I don't know, I don't care. I don't do. Uh,
Okay, but anyway, my point was that you could have different minhagim between different communities, and you can have different minhagim between different rabbis, which can be confusing because you might be talking to someone from a neighborhood community, and they said, "Oh, well, my rabbi said this." That's okay as long as you're following. And then if you have a question, the worst thing to do is to ask ChatGPT. The best thing to do is to ask your rabbi or someone who's learned from the community, or someone who's keeps mitzvot and Shabbat and knows what the minhagim are in your community. Okay. Also, even if you look up on a reliable source in of halakha, for example, Pnina Halacha that we have in so there could be different customs, and it could be that the rabbi here is telling something different. The
I will
case of
have,
tea,
Moshe David, I will have a
yeah.
couple of examples this shiur where I disagree with Pnina Halacha, and it's something we talked about last week, and so there will be
So,
examples, but I will tell the different opinions.
yeah, and my son knows that I don't allow Pninei Halacha into our home, um, because I think that the best thing, in other words, if you're able to, is to learn. Look at the books behind me. This is how you learn. You don't need a summary. A summary is always right. You need to know in depth of Halacha, and Halacha is never black and white. And that's what's beautiful about it also, but you also have to know what to do at the end of the day. But this specific case I can give in terms of preparing tea. So I'll give my only personal example. My When we got married, we had a question because my wife. Her customs of her home are Temani, are Yemenite, and my customs are Ashkenazi. So how do you do? In other words, what do the kids do? Well, mom does this and dad does this, but mom probably knows what she's doing. That doesn't right. That doesn't make so much sense. So you have to have one system which works. You also have things which can be more stringent in with Temanim that are not the case. So there has to be a decision that is made, especially when you have intercultural, intercommunal marriages. In other words, someone from Malmö is marrying someone from Copenhagen. Are they going to keep 6 hours between milk and meat, or are they going to keep 1 hour? Um, so these are, I just wanted to make the point as you're getting to learn halakha that um, that's why you have your, first of all, your local rabbi, but also it could be that you'll see something else which is written either in Pnei Halakha, or if you're reading sources, or even the books that, the source books that we have, and it's an opportunity to learn more. I think when you see a difference in minhagim, it's an opportunity for you to try to understand in depth why that is, where that comes from, why is there a difference in opinion, and then you have a deeper understanding of the halakha itself, not only what to do and what's not to do. So I'm gonna pass this over to Rav Yair, and I'm gonna write the email in the chat. And again, if you're not connected to any of these or the WhatsApp groups, it's really important so that you can get the updates there. Okay, Shavua Tov to everyone. Rav Yair, bevakasha.
Thank you. Hello everyone, and we continue the shiur. And I actually wanted to start it exactly with an example of something that Rav Moshe David mentioned. I was asked last week a question by Ketil, and I'm surprised that all of you jumped and agreed with him because he brought a halakha that it's mentioned in the books that we use, in the book of in the Conscious Guide to Halacha, and I disagreed without remembering um, that he said that the Rav Steinsaltz in the book. He wrote about the brushing teeth and hurting the gums and bleeding, and where Rav Steinsaltz says he prohibits and so I looked at it immediately when Ketil wrote it to me, and I wrote an answer, both from Rav Yosef, but also many others who gave exactly the explanation that I gave in the Shiur about the reason behind it and why that. Why is it considered davar she'eino mitkaven, as something you didn't intend to do? But this is a great example of a disagreement, and so I apologize to Katie that I disagreed so clearly because, of course, he has an opinion that supports his. Well, he read it. He didn't just come up with it. So well done, and it's again a great example of places where you can have disagreements among rabbis because the poskim they say different things. Um, um, so this is one of them, and we will see also another one today. We are going to finish,
Rav
hopefully.
Yair, Rav Yair,
Yes.
just to follow up, I know this is taking some time, but just to follow up on this. In other words, if you have opinions that say it could be problematic to brush your teeth, um, and then you have an option, for example, to buy some liquid, and then isn't it better? Would you say it's better?
Now we talk about the brushing, not the which we. It wasn't about the mishchat shinaim. It was about the like hurting the gums with a brush.
Okay, but if you have a liquid that would solve both of those, both the toothpaste and so would it be better to say, why don't I just buy this liquid for Shabbat? Or if your rabbi says it's okay to brush, then you can brush. Like what would you be your approach?
My approach is in this case, especially here, that um, saying to someone that brushing might be problematic will frighten. I'm not saying that I won't bring the sources of that, but this is so crucial, and we are in a world today that is so how do you say istinist, um, that the level of hygiene and things are very high, and being a machmir on these issues, I think is principally problematic. So I can mention that there are even people who would say that, but I will follow the lenient if there is like a broad accept that this is fine, and the more string rule is we don't need to be string just because there is a string opinion. Like that's not the you don't need to always just cover and take the most extreme. If there's something that is a broad accept, I think, in my opinion, this is something that I will follow. I won't cover the more string opinion doesn't exist. But this is definitely a place. Probably I work from my own. From my own feeling towards this, that I don't feel it's clean when use a mouthwash instead of brushing teeth, and this is something I know many people will feel the same. So telling them no, you're not even allowed to do that on Shabbat is very, in my opinion, very extreme. So if there are poskim who allow it, then I think it should be allowed. That is my opinion, but I'm most definitely very welcome to disagree.
Yeah.
That's also part of the reason we have different rabbis teaching is also for showing this different opinions. On the personal level of Moshe David have always been more in the like real halachic. There's a term about being on the personal level, Rav Moshe David, of being machmir on himself and make it to others, more open for others to make solutions, while on himself doing be careful also with the more string opinions. Correct me
Well,
if I'm
I
wrong, Rav
would say
Moshe
that
David.
my kids are very happy to hear the opinion that you don't need to brush your teeth, their teeth, but their friends might not be so happy. So we can say it at that. But eh, I think that the most important point here is that if you know that this is something that you were taught, then you should feel fully okay to follow it and not think, oh, the rabbi is telling me something that is less okay. I think that's the most important in all of these shiurim of halacha. That if this is what Rav Yair said, and he also gave you the background for it, then even if you meet other people who say, "Oh, you know nothing," don't you know that you're not allowed to? No, then you should be strong and say, this is what we learned in the shiur. And and I think that that point itself is what I
And
wanted
you
to
can
bring
add,
out.
Moshe David, if one day you come to God and he will ask you, but why did you brush your teeth on Shabbat? Then you say, but I followed what the rabbi said, and then it's on my account and not on yours.
Yeah. I think for sure. I think that that's the that and again we can go into more depth of it, but I think that sorry, one second. Um, but I think what Rav Yair just said is very important, that you can end up trying to be more stringent and it makes the situation a lot more worse. And there's many examples of that. That when someone thinks that they are being more stringent over something, especially in terms of interpersonal relations, then you end up in a situation in which you think you're doing better for yourself, but it creates tension with someone else. And we know that the famous saying, Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah, that how we relate to each other is right, comes before anything else. And there's many examples in the religious world today in which people are stringent and they say, but it's just something I want to do for myself. But no, it's not. And I would also add one more thing is that um, when sometimes you're more stringent, you actually less know halakha less in a sense. I'll give you an example, and then I'll let Rav Yair start his shiur. Sorry for all of this. Um, for example, we have one sink in our home. I could easily have two, but the fact that I have one means my kids know a lot more halakha than if we had two. Um, right? So you can say, oh, it's much, why don't you just have two? Like my own parents do. But the fact is we got this when we got this kitchen, it had one, but also in the end, um, we ended up so that my kids know a lot more halakha that has to do with milk and meat that is much more practical. They know how to solve things. They know what happens if you end up like then I think then their own cousins, for example, if a fork would drop into the meat sink, then they would think it's treif, that it's not, it has to be kosher. My kids know the difference. So I think that's another point, but we can go much more in depth. But
I say,
I
Moshe
think,
David,
yeah,
I used to say about that in Israel, people don't keep kosher, they eat kosher. But in the abroad, we keep kosher because we actually like need to look on stuff. We need to understand. We need to think. In Israel, everything is kosher, basically, and that's also why people make mistakes because they don't imagine that things might be not kosher in the shops. So it doesn't even appear in there. So they eat kosher, but they don't keep like they don't need to check because someone else
we
checked for them.
mentioned we used that example when we were learning kashrut,
Yeah.
that according to the Rambam, he says that one the mitzvah of kashrut is v'hivdaltem mina chayat mea laTorah, that you actually have to make the distinction as part of keeping kashrut. And if you go into a kosher supermarket or buy on kosher for you where everything is kosher, you're not making the distinction between what is and what is not, and that's what it actually says in the Torah. So we use that example according to Maimonides. But I think you can start your shiur now, Rav Yair.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Moshe David. And we'll go. we're in the middle. We need to finish both the Muktze, which is very important, and I could see those also from the past that many times people misunderstand, and so this is extremely important shiur. And we need to finish also something from last time, so I will start with that. We will continue from the Melechet Borer, and Borer we talked about. We will talk about Tochen. So I will share the. Yes. So we came to Melechet Tochen. You remember one of the 39 melachot? We start from the from the Talmud. Rav Yudah said, the word tochen. Do you tochen is like grinding. Okay, so this is the word. It's important because it's like what we call av melacha. Av melacha is a principle, but it has many like outcomes, also things that come under this melacha that are relevant. And here we start with Rav Yudah said, in the case of these peppers, crushing peppers, you all know um, the way you used to make um, spices, right? And some people still do, and like a good proper chef will have a stone thing where he crushes and makes the spices himself, and not buy the ready-made in the supermarkets. Most of us don't do that anymore, but this is exactly tochen, right? To crush them, to grind them. This is the source, and then the Talmud comes and says, Rav Yehuda said, in the case of these peppers, crushing them one by one with the handle of a knife is permitted. However, crushing two at a time is prohibited. Rava said, since he alters, even crushing many is also permitted. So what happened here? We have again a machloket, two different rabbis, Rav Yehuda and Rava, in the Talmud discuss about peppers. Now, crushing them in a regular way with this I don't know what the names of the tools, but crushing them in a regular way where you put them in a bowl that is meant for them and crushing them by something that a crusher, like something that will crush them. This is completely forbidden. But then the Talmud here brings them a possibility, says if you crush it with the handle of a knife, which means a handle of a knife is not the way you usually will crush something, right? So if you do it with the handle of a knife, then it will be allowed. Rav Yehuda says it's permitted if you do it one by one. However, crushing two is prohibited because when you crush two, you already create to have more. So it's it turned it into a work and not something you just need. Because the reason when you take one like small pepper and crush it, it's for your own immediate use. But if you crush more, then it's you already crushed to create crushed pepper and not in order to eat. It's not in order to help enjoy the Shabbat, but you already do it in for more. So he said it has to be one by one. Rava said since he alters, since he does it in a different way, but Shinui, he does it in a special way, then even crushing many is also permitted. Boledo, you had a question?
It was not a question. It's called a mortar in Danish, but I don't know what it's the same. And I just wanted you give you the name.
Yeah, great, good. And from here we will continue just to say to see how also this well, where does it go? Because of course this question of grinding can go more to many different things. because you do grinding in so many ways, and we'll see the different things here. One who cuts vegetables finely is liable for grinding. Okay, so now suddenly we see something that probably almost all of us do, right? When we make salad on Shabbat, we cut vegetable finely. So, whoa, now that sounds like a problem. Um, and the main question here will be, what is finely? Okay, Tico, wait a second. We'll read forward and then we'll last. And Rama adds, likewise, it is prohibited to cut dried figs and carobs for the elderly. So here you take something that will be in theory not allowed, but to do it for the elderly because this is the way they eat, it will be fine. This only applies to fruits, etc. But one is permitted to turn bread into crumbs for chickens because it has already been grinded, and therefore no need for concern as there is no second grinding. Okay, so here we have suddenly an opening. So we are not allowed to grind, but you're allowed to take a bread and make it into crumbs. For example, people might take bread and some people put bread in the soup. Might have other problems, but regarding grinding, this is there's no grinding after grinding. Okay, if something already was grinded, then you can't grind it again. So if you take your cookie and grind it, it was already grinded when it was made originally. So you don't grind things that were already. Okay, I explained. The same thing will be, for example, in sugar. If you have sugar that was hardened and then turned like strung together, then you're not allowed to grind it again because it was already grinded as sugar. So you don't grind it by crushing the sugar that was strung together, became hard. Yes, and all of this only refers to cutting for later. But prior, this is important, but prior to eating, it is all permitted. Okay? Why is this important? So cutting vegetables to grind it very finely, like to cut it finely, will not be considered grinding when it's in order to eat immediately. And here you have different opinions of immediately is also like cutting a salad just before the dinner is considered immediately. Okay, that is so cutting it just for the sake of cutting. I'll give an example. If you want to make a cabbage a cabbage salad, and when you already take the cabbage, take it out and grind all of it because like you cut it finely, all of it. That's not permitted because you can't cut it in order to keep it already cut because you were already on it. So you just cut all of it and put it aside. But if you cut it finely for making the salad that you will eat immediately in the dinner now, then you're allowed. So it's allowed for the sake of eating, but it's not allowed when it's in advance, just doing it for the sake of cutting. And then you are making a melacha, you are working, you're creating something, not for Shabbat use, but just for the sake of working, right? You are working at the kitchen. You prepare something that you don't need for Shabbat. It's not part of the Shabbat. And also you don't do it if you already prepare for the next dinner. Like it's only connected to the dinner that will come now. Here there are also different opinions. Some say that very fine will be problematic. Some say everything is allowed. There are different opinions regarding this. I brought in the Tulmat edition, but I think okay, Tikva, what was your question?
Yes, you answered
Good.
about in to prepare salad in Shabbat, we cannot use. We have to use the hands, or we are allowed to use knives.
Yes,
Or
yes.
we cannot use everything in the kitchen. You understand my question?
If you can't use,
If you cannot use everything in the kitchen to prepare the salad because it's Shabbat. For example, to wash
what can't you use?
I mean, if you have to wash the salad, you cannot use I don't know, I don't remember the name in English. You have to use the only knives, or what is okay?
Yes.
What is allowed to use to prepare the salad?
Knife.
Is it only knife?
Yeah, something that is used specifically to, for example, grinding, right? Like it's called a grinder, right? A grinder will be forbidden because that's a forbidden melacha directly. So you can't use the grinder, but you can use the knife. Yes, I'm wondering if we should read Tumat Edition. I want to read it only because you never read Tumat Edition in your life. It's actually many of the Ashkenazi sources, poskim, come from Tumat Edition. Was a great Ashkenazi rabbi. He lived Rabbi Israel Isalan. He lived. We talk about. He was born 1390 in Regensburg, passed away 1460. So this is the frame. Why is it important that I say specifically the time? It's because he's before Shulchan Aruch. There's a very big difference between rabbis before Shulchan Aruch and after Shulchan Aruch regarding their level. Rishonim is like our more important regarding disagreement with them. But you have also many Rishonim with different opinions. But the Rishonim, they come before the Shulchan Aruch, and he's the Ashkenazi Rishonim. And in his book, in Tumat Edition, he says, he writes, Shulchan Aruch that we just read comes, among other things, the Rema uses what he writes here. One who cannot chew well with the teeth, and have before them meat that is not tender, such as a tough roast, it is permitted for them to cut the meat finely with a knife on Shabbat and then eat it, or not. And he brings a different example for the different things. Where will you be liable for grinding and not? You know what? We'll drop you because we don't have enough time to go the detail. I'll take it aside, and I'll do what Rav Moshe David said. You're not allowed to bring a Pninei Halacha, where something that is very relevant that we probably all of us use. He has a great summary, so I use the summary to see it regarding juicing. Like squeezing fruits in order to release their juice, right? So when you squeeze a lemon, which is definitely very relevant for Shabbat. Okay, this is something, lemon and salads are something that you really need and have all the time. So squeezing fruit in order to release the juice is a violation of the prohibition of mefarek, etoladav melacha of dash. So it's a result of a result. Okay, mefarek is not it's not av melacha. It's not one of the 13 melachot, but it comes. It's a tolada. It was born of the melacha of dash. Dash is something that it's connected to the when you take the corns out of the wheat, you like squeeze them around with something that is dash. While dash is involved separating wheat kernels from their husks. Mefarek involves separating juice from its fruit, which is also not allowed. Okay? So in theory, that is, which means we can't squeeze lemon on Shabbat. So you need to prepare lemon juice before Shabbat, which is, by the way, always a good thing. To prepare it before, it will avoid problem. But it is prohibited by Torah law to squeeze olives to produce oil, or to squeeze grapes to produce wine. Wine and oil are important liquids, and the majority of olives and grapes are grown in order to produce these liquids. But juicing other fruits, which are not grown primarily for their juice, is a rabbinical. Yeah, but then one may not juice a fruit for the purpose of extracting its juice in order to drink it. However, if the purpose is to add flavor to food, one may juice fruit directly into food. In such a case, the squeezing is never viewed as producing a discrete quantity of liquid. Okay? Did you understand what I read, or it was Chinese? The basic idea, you are not allowed to create juice, but if you create food and food stays food, what would be the example? If you need to squeeze lemon in order to put in the salad, you can't squeeze it into like this vessel that keep the lemon juice and then pour it into the salad. That is directly what's forbidden, but you're allowed to squeeze it directly into the salad. So if you hold the lemon just above the salad and squeeze it, then it's food that is still food. Like it stays in the same category. It didn't change what it is. And that's why it's fine. Okay, I'll stop with this because I want to go to the shiur that was just like leftover from the last shiur, and now we have 20 minutes to Muktze, which is definitely not enough. So all you need to read and learn more about it. But I will share the Muktze now, and we'll continue from there. The word Muktze. How many of you know the word Muktze? Can
I don't know.
anyone try to explain what Muktze is?
I don't know. I don't know. What is Muktze? I don't know.
Okay.
I can
Is there
try.
anyone who knows and want to say what Muktze is?
I would like to try.
Thank
It
you.
it's like items from your everyday life that doesn't really belong to Shabbat. It can be flowers. So if you put flowers before Shabbat, you're not supposed to like move them or touch them, or your computer. But then if the computer is on your way and you want to use the chair, then you're eventually allowed to do it if you like choose to like move it together with something else, as I understand. Yeah, so it's the items you're prohibited to touch on Shabbat because they are like destroying the onek and the whole
The
atmosphere.
atmosphere. Okay, so that was partially correct. So thank you for being bold and try to say. As I can see that Muriel is also having her hand up.
Yeah, it's just I heard it in different ways that I mean sometimes it's for well like you said before, like for objects that are for everyday life, but sometimes I even heard it for like normal Shabbat prohibitions. So it's a bit confusing actually. So,
Thank you. Exactly, Muriel.
yeah.
Thank you for this thing you said, because you're right. It's very confusing. You will hear among especially children that the word Muktze is almost used in the same manner as forbidden. My kids were there. I heard it so many times say, "It's Muktze to press on this," or "It's Muktze to," which is completely wrong. Okay, so Muktze, because it's very vague, has a not specific, and and sometimes might be permitted and sometimes not permitted. And what is it? Then so that's why it's so important the shiur now, because Muktze actually fills all of our Shabbat. So it's a very important word that we need to understand. So the Muktze are things you're not allowed to move on Shabbat. Okay, first of all, the practical aspects. What is considered Muktze? We will talk about in a second. But first of all, just understanding, Muktze are things that you're not allowed to move on Shabbat. So you actually, many times, you're allowed to touch it, but not allowed to move it. Okay, so it's which is a very weird thing. Also, how do you touch? And depends which specifically, and we'll go into the details. But this is like an extreme important thing, because it's also things that you wouldn't even think of as problematic on Shabbat. Like, I don't know, stones, right? Why will there be anything wrong with stone, right? You don't work with it. You don't create the one or the other thing. And we'll now go to the details of the examples. But in general, Muktze are things that, as Paulina, you said, they don't belong to the Shabbat from different reasons. And because they don't belong to the Shabbat, you're not allowed to move them. It's like you take them out of your Shabbat. It's out of your horizon on Shabbat, and it's supposed to be something you not push aside, but stay aside. Like you don't move them on Shabbat. They are around us. They are here. They are present, but they're not part of the Shabbat. And we push them out of Shabbat. So let's go to the source. Now it's the word Muktze comes very late in connection with Shabbat. Originally, the word in the Talmud connected Muktze to Chag and not to Shabbat, and the debates about if you have Muktze in Shabbat or not. But the word was used later on. Definitely also in Shabbat, but that's also why the sources are quite late and not not primary sources. So I want to share the Rambam in Mishneh Torah. We all remember who Rambam is? Yes? Good. Bracha, I could see you said yes, you know what Rambam is. You want to share and tell us?
Rambam was a great rabbi.
Yes. From what time period, more or less?
Oh, no, don't ask me that. I'm guessing 17 or 1800s.
Long before?
Oh, okay, pardon. Yeah, no,
Around
I'm
1100s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and he and it's important because, as I said, he's before Shulchan Aruch. In many ways, he paved the way to Shulchan Aruch in his great work of Mishneh Torah. And the place he's from, Spain and Egypt, like he moved from Spain to Egypt, but that is the area where he came from, and was
Cordoba?
considered the greatest rabbi in Jewish history in so many ways. Yes, so Rambam, remember, he's very crucial when you study halakha. Okay, let's see what he writes about it. Anyone wants to read?
Rav Jair, can you please make the text bigger?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
I can read.
Is it better? Good. Yes, thank you. Who wants to read? You can start.
The sages forbade the carrying of certain objects on the Shabbat in the same manner as one carries during the week. Why was this prohibition instituted? The particular laws that result from these principles are described in the following two chapters. Sages said if the prophets warned that the manner in which a person walks on the Shabbat should not resemble the manner in which he walks during the week, and similarly, one's conversation on the Shabbat should not resemble one's conversation during the week, as it is written, refraining from speaking about mundane, Muktze.
Mundane matters. Like
Oh, okay.
this is the basic of all Shabbat rules in so many ways that you need to have. Rambam starts with this, like the whole aspects of Shabbat, and this is like the essence that Shabbat should be different than regular days. So one of them is also the question of carrying. Yeah.
Uh, Surely the manner in which one carries on the Shabbat should not resemble the manner in which one carries during the week. In this matter, no one will regard the Shabbat as an ordinary weekday and lift up the repair articles, carrying them from room to room or from house to house, or set aside stones are the like. These restrictions are necessary, for since the person is idle and sitting at home, it is likely that he will seek something with which to occupy himself. Thus, he will not have ceased activity and will have negated the motivating principle for the Torah commandment, thus will rest.
Yes.
And
Okay.
the question
So
here, so
yes,
mundan English word. It's not like English for Muktze.
which word?
The mundane.
No.
Okay.
No. That's like
Regular,
yeah,
ordinary.
regular. That's not the
Ordinary.
word. The word muktzeh is muktzeh.
Okay, so it's
Like it doesn't have
Thank you.
but you can say that maybe the source of the word muktzeh, there are different opinions. Like one can be it's connected to katzeh. The word katzeh means the end, something that lies at the rather than like on the canton, on the how do you say
On the edge.
on the edge, right? So katzeh is like it was pushed to the edge. So it's outside. It's outside your Shabbat. You don't think about it. It might have maybe also connection to ktziot, something that was like dried fruit. When you put fruit to dry, you would put them at the edge. You put them on the in the like outside the house or somewhere you don't go into, and let them stay there and dry a long time, which means they're not prepared yet for Shabbat, right? They are something they will be ready only in a long time, so they are not part of your Shabbat because you already planned to put them in the future. So they don't belong to now because they belong to the future. And so maybe that there are different opinions of where the word muktzeh comes from, but the principle is it's something that is outside, outcast. It's out of your Shabbat horizon. And yes, Sarah?
I have a question regarding the Shabbat candles. They're part of Shabbat, but you're not allowed to
We'll
use.
talk about it.
Okay.
Because we're going to give the examples and then specifically what to do with these. And then he also gives a explanation, because the Rambam here gives the explanation why is it a problem to move. So let's say we have a pen on the table. Like what is wrong by moving it to somewhere else? Right? We don't do anything with it, right? So if you take the pen and move it somewhere else because you don't want it to disturb or you want to. So what is wrong by doing this? This is like the important part. When you don't do the things that are forbidden, what is. So he adds, furthermore, when one searches for and carry the articles that are used for forbidden activity, it is possible that one will use them and thus be motivated to perform a forbidden labor. So like the fact that you will have it, you might do like something with it. So it's better to take it completely out of your Shabbat and not, when you start moving it, you might do something with it. Another reason for prohibition is that there are some people who are not craftsmen and are always tourists and those that stand on the street corners. These individuals never perform labor. were they to be allowed to walk, talk, and carry as they do during the week, like some of our works, some of our craft, we don't do things that are forbidden. One of the greatest example, you will have a different shiur in chashmal, but there are, in theory, you could argue that computers are not that forbidden on Shabbat. And if computers are and in a way, we'll say, if you follow these directions, then we would be able to work on Shabbat, because this is so many of us, our work is sitting by the computer. And because we don't make anything, right? We don't create anything. We don't make any change in the world. Like, it's just so. In theory, you could have said that it will permit them to work, and that's why these people. Some of the things that these people do, we also prohibit the carrying. So it's not. So it also stops these possibilities of work on Shabbat. So it's not only the question what you do, but also what's the result of that. So this is like the reasoning. For this reason, sages instituted refraining from such activities, walking, talking, and carrying. For the cessation of such activities is universally applicable. Okay, so now what is it in practical? Now we talked about the reason. What is in practical? I start with the Rema, who explains this in Shulchan Aruch or Chaim. It is only forbidden to move Muktze, but touching without moving is permitted. Therefore, it is permitted to touch the candle holders in shul, on which candles are placed, or the portable stove with fire within, and it's permitted to remove a non-Muktze item placed on top of a Muktze. Okay, so it's not completely out of if we have a stove, or we have a gas. If it's something put above you, you're allowed to move this. It is also permitted to move a Muktze through blowing. Okay, it's and it is only moving the Muktze kilachar yad back, and it's therefore not called moving. So here we have an opening. What would you do in a situation that you need to move something that disturbs you even more? So there are, and we'll go into examples. So the basic idea, Muktze, you're not allowed to move, but you're allowed to touch. Don't touch it in order to touch. Like, you're not allowed to touch a pen on Shabbat, but like if there's a reason to touch, then it's not. You won't avoid taking something because you might touch something that is Muktze, for example. That's it. So what is Muktze? We have 4 categories of Muktze. Okay, I bring here the summary from Pninei Halacha. The one is Muktze mechamat gufo. Okay, that inherently Muktze. Items that are not fitting for any use on Shabbat, such as rocks, trees, sand, animals, and inedible foods. Okay, so I'll give an example of what covers in this, something that is itself doesn't have any use on Shabbat. Rocks. Now you could say, yeah, but I can use a rock, right? There are situations that I would put a rock to stop the door from closing. In such case, you need to plan before Shabbat. Let's wait until we cover all the examples, and then we can have the questions. And so if there's a stone that you do need in Shabbat, then you're allowed to, if you thought about it before Shabbat, or put it aside for Shabbat, then you're allowed to use it. Because then it's not anymore not part of Shabbat if you plan to use it, because then it has a use for you. But if you didn't plan it, and then suddenly you came to a situation, so I'll take a rock and put it, then it's not allowed. Okay, so if you thought about it and you had the reason for you to need it, then you're allowed to use it on Shabbat, but not if you didn't plan it in advance. Okay, so the same article itself might be permitted if you planned it. So this is Muktze mechamat gufo, but for example, a vegetable that you can't eat without preparing, a potato, that is Muktze, because the potato is not usable on Shabbat. If you didn't prepare it in advance, or wheat, flour, because you don't cook on Shabbat, you can't. Then the flour is Muktze. You're not allowed to use. There's nothing wrong with it, right? It's not because you will work with it, but because it's not something that it has any use for you on Shabbat, then it's not allowed. It's Muktze, and you're not allowed to move it. But for example, one of the example here is sand. If there is a sand case in a place where the kids play in the sand, then it is allowed, because that sand is prepared for kids to play with. So this is part of our Shabbat. Okay, the sand that was put in a place for the kids to play is allowed because it was meant for children to use. So it is part of our Shabbat, but the sand on the beach is not. Okay, so yes. Okay, so one, Muktze mechamat gufo, inherently Muktze. Second, Muktze mechamat chesron kis. Muktze because of monetary loss. What is that? Valuable object that one takes care not to handle, except for their sole designated use, out of concern that they will be ruined. Okay, I'll give an example. If you have a beautiful painting, that cost a lot, a painting that you might that in order to move it, you will bring experts to do it because it's so valuable. Then you're not allowed to move it on Shabbat because it might have a monetary loss. So also in regular days, this is something that you will be very careful with. Some would say the same thing will also apply, for example, a credit card that is directly connected to monetary loss, and or if, for example, if someone had a special, like if a shochet had like a shochet knife, which is very expensive, then even if you can use it in order to cut your food, you don't, because this is something they're very careful with. Like no one touches it in regular. Like if it's something that you keep, let's say, if it's something you keep away from the children because you are worried that they will break, then that is Muktze mechamat chesron kis. This is a Muktze that you're afraid on its value. If it's something you're very careful also on regular days, then because you're afraid because of its value, then you're not allowed to use it on Shabbat. Good. Next one. Basis ledavar asur. Okay, a base for forbidden object. That refers to a case where one places a Muktze item on an object that is not itself Muktze. Since he intends for it to remain there on Shabbat, he puts the base out of his mind as well, and it becomes Muktze. Okay, so if you have a base that you put something on it, the second you put something that is Muktze on it, then the base itself is also Muktze for Shabbat. For example, there was a question about candles, Shabbat candles. Definitely, when the light is on, there are two different things. So the Shabbat candles are on a silver plate, let's say. The silver plate is also Muktze because it has the candles on them. That's like the very basic example. And then we have something that is not itself forbidden, but kelim shemelachtam leisur, a vessel that is used for something forbidden. These are the most common thing that we have. Implement whose usage is forbidden have a special status, since they are designed to perform forbidden activities. One puts them out of his mind. On the other hand, sometimes they are used for permitted purposes. Okay, so now we come to the gray area, which is the hardest. These things, klishe melachto leisur. A pen, for example, has no Shabbat use, right? In any way. There's nothing that the pen can be used that is permitted on Shabbat. There's no, but you have things that are in a gray area. For example, scissors. Scissors, you're not allowed to cut papers on Shabbat, but you can use the scissors to, to cut the milk. In Israel, they use the milk bags to cut the milk, the corner of the milk bag. Then it's allowed, because you use it directly in the way that it's supposed to be used. So the same thing can be permitted for one thing, but is forbidden, and then it depends on how much is it used for the one or the other. But these things are like the gray area. It's allowed to use for the sake of Shabbat, but it's not allowed to use when it's in a permittable use, of course, in something you're allowed to do, but it's not allowed, but it is Muktze if it's not. So some of the scissors will be not allowed, but the scissors that you use to cut the milk open, that is allowed. For example, our scissors in the kitchen are only used for open things like bags that you're allowed to open also on Shabbat. These bags, then you might argue that these scissors, because they're only used for that, then they are permitted also on Shabbat. But the scissors that you have in the children's rooms that they use for arts and crafts, they are completely forbidden. They are Muktze. So we have the 4 categories of Muktze. And again, if I go back, if you're asked by the Beit Din, what is Muktze? Muktze are things that don't belong to Shabbat, and there are 4 categories in which way they don't belong to Shabbat, and they're forbidden, and it's forbidden to move them. Okay, not to touch, to move. That is Muktze. And there was a question I want to add. This is one of the classical examples that they use on Shabbat candles, and there are different opinions regarding this. But for example, there are many people who have the tradition to put the Shabbat candles on the table. My suggestion is not to do that. It's better to put the Shabbat candles next to the table and not on the table, because they're not allowed to move the Shabbat candles. Those who put the Shabbat candles on the tables are supposed to put it on a trail, but that's also forbidden, right? Because it's basis ledavar asur. It's the base of something that is forbidden. And the Shabbat candles are, the question is, if it's kelim if it's kli shemelachto leisur, it's less problem and you will be allowed to move it. But some will say that it's Muktze mechamat chetzchon kis, that these Shabbat candles are usually very expensive, so you also won't be allowed to move it. Usually, for example, they stand in the same place and you don't touch them during the week, right? And it's expensive. You don't want the kids to touch it. So this goes under the rules of Muktze mechamat chetzchon kis. But anyways, the solution that some do, but not everyone permit, is to put something else on the same trail that is allowed to move. So, for example, what you'll see in a religious home that put the Shabbat candle on the table, they will put the salt on the same trail. So, because the salt is allowed, and then this trail is both used for something that is forbidden, but it's also to move, but it's also for something that's allowed to move. And in that way, you will be allowed to move the trail out of the table and set the table for tomorrow. But the best solution, I can see someone is smiling. You probably have seen it before doing this with salt. I would suggest to avoid the conflict about it, put the candles next to the table in a way that you can see it in the table. We're already 5 minutes after time, so Muriel, you have two questions now, also Paulina. So let's
Well,
be
maybe
quick.
mine is quick and it's about the candle, at least I hope. But it was just, what about the next day, like, on the Saturday morning or day when the candles are already off? Is it still like that it shouldn't move?
Yes, but it is still klisha melachto leisur, because the way you use it, there's no permittable way to use the Shabbat candles, right? So this is exactly a klisha melachto leisur, a vessel that its use is not permitted on Shabbat. So it's not itself not permitted, it's the use of it is not permitted. Okay, it's not like a stone that itself is a problem. And that's why, it's, as I said, it's a more gray area, but it's still forbidden to use to move it also after the. Of course, you don't move it when the lights are on. What I said before was moving them when the light is off. The solution that I said with putting the salt on. So thank you also for specifying this. Yes, Paulina?
So, because I usually live in Copenhagen and we don't really have dogs or pets in our apartments, and now I have a dog here. And whenever I come from the shul, I usually go for a walk with my dog and my roommate on a Saturday. I never thought about like, am I allowed to touch the dog, or is
Yeah,
it
so that's a great, thank you for this great example. This is one of the examples you can also find in the poskim. The lifting, because you're allowed to touch, as we just said, right? So you're allowed to touch, you're not allowed to move, right? But then comes the difference between, let's say you have a small puppy that all the time, like part of the way he is at home, also in the regular days, is also lifting him, right? So this is part of the way it is treated. It's like the kids always play, they come on your lap, you cuddle. So if you have like a small dog that part of the way he is at home is also picking him up, you're allowed to pick him up on Shabbat. But if you have a sheep, all of you that have sheep,
more like a sheep.
that will not, because that's not the regular use of the sheep. Then you're not allowed to lift it on Shabbat, because that is like directly. So thank you for the example.
Yeah, I never thought about it before.
Good. In general, you're not supposed to have dogs, in my opinion, but but there are those who permit it. So great. So Shavua Tov. It was very short, not enough. Learn more the rules of Muktze, because see how many of you didn't know them before, because we're not aware of these things, and it's connected to so many regular things that you didn't even think about as not permitted on Shabbat. Why will it not permitted? So this is something should be deepened. Please study more about the rules of Muktze and implement them in your Shabbat. All the best. Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shabbat Tov.